Hi, my name's Zoe Wallace. Over the past 6 weeks, we've been talking a lot about leadership. We've talked a lot about what makes a good leader, how to be a good leader, what it takes to be a good leader, and for our final project, we got to interview a leader of our choice. Now, I know it was recommended that we don't interview family members. However, due to my dad's past, I felt very strongly called to interview him. My dad graduated from Salisbury University with a bachelor's in computer science. After spending a couple years doing coding and programming, he worked his way up the ladder and became vice president of Oracle. Oracle is a huge tech consulting firm. He did a lot of consulting with the government, and eventually he was just running the day-to-day operations at Oracle. Now at the time, we were living in Virginia. He decided one day that he wanted to move down to Tampa. So after talking it over with the CEO, they agreed to start a branch down in Tampa. So he moved down to Tampa, he started the branch here. It is huge now. He was in charge of hundreds of employees, and he literally built this company from the ground up, or at least the Tampa branch. Now, not only was he a strong leader with having hundreds of employees, but then after a few years, he decided to leave and follow his dream and start his own company. My dad has always wanted to start his own company. However, he never knew exactly what he wanted to do. Eventually, they landed on a spa. My parents own a spa, and they're in charge of 13 employees. It's very successful in the Tampa area, and I've always loved it. I've always had an interest in either taking over the business or starting my own business one day. However, my dad has never really wanted to show me a lot about their business because he really wants me to find my own way and to figure out what I truly want to do. However, this interview project was a great chance for me to finally get to sit down with him and to discuss leadership, what it takes, what the business is really about, and what he does on a day-to-day basis. Now, my first impressions of meeting with my father. So my dad wanted me to get everything out of this interview that a normal person would. So he asked me to schedule a time with him to come into the office just like everybody else had to do. Upon going in, the first thing I noticed before he even saw me was the fact that he was sitting at the front desk with the office manager and one of their new trainees. He wasn't up in his office, he wasn't, hiding out. He was getting his hands dirty, helping out. Now, this said a lot about his leadership because it says a lot to the employees. It makes them feel like they can go to him, like he's willing to help, like he wants them to succeed. Now, after meeting with him, we went upstairs and we sat down. Through the interview, he was very well poised. He was actually really cute. He got all dressed up. He answered all of my questions, and he even anticipated where my questions were going. So he answered questions before I even knew I had them, which was awesome. Now, some of the key leadership traits that he thought that every leader should have. He felt that number one was confidence. He said every leader should be confident in what they're doing. He said a strong leader needs, to stand with poise, to say everything with confidence, so that the people around them don't doubt his ability to lead. However, he did point out that this doesn't mean that you have to know everything. He said it's okay to seek out help. It's okay to admit that you don't know something. However, when you make a decision, stick with it. Be confident in your actions. That way everyone around you is reassured in your ability to lead. Something else he said is that running a business can feel like everything's happening a million miles an hour. There's a million things going on. And as the leader, as the person in charge, you need to be able to catch every little thing. He said that, sometimes people are going to miss things. Sometimes things are going to slip through the cracks. And as the leader, he needs to make sure that jobs are getting done, that people aren't forgetting. He said that this wasn't just the case at the spa, but even the case at his big company that he used to run. He said, it's something that you have to deal with, whether small, whether large. You have to be the person to make sure everything is done. He doesn't mean that you have to be doing everything, just that you're making sure tasks are getting done, people are understanding the expectations, and that everyone feels confident in what they're doing. He said another great trait is empathy and sympathy. He said that it was important to be empathetic because you need to understand where people are coming from. He said everyone's going to have issues, everyone's going to have rough days, everyone's going to need help, and it's important that you can understand that. He also said it's important to empathize, with business partners, with people they're bringing in, with people they're consulting with, just so that you better understand where they're coming from and that you can build a stronger relationship, both outside the company and inside the company. Now, when he was talking about sympathy, he was talking about running the smaller business with his employees. He felt that it was very important that you could sympathize with them. He said everyone's going to have a rough day, everyone's going to have trouble. He's always wanted this business to feel more like a family. Now, this doesn't mean everyone gets to slide and doesn't do their work. It just means that we support each other. For example, he was telling me that his office manager had a childcare issue this summer. She thought that she had it covered. She realized a couple weeks she wasn't going to be able to find care. Well, so that she wouldn't lose her hours, he offered to bring in a second person. That way, when she could come in, she would have a little extra help. And if she last minute had to call out, then it was okay, we were still covered. Now, a normal boss might just say, you know what, okay, put someone else on the schedule, you're just going to have to take a pay cut. But he didn't think that was fair. He was able to sympathize with the situation. He said, you're a great employee. Let's make this work. Another trait that he said was very important was decision-making capabilities. He knows this is something I struggle with, so I'm sure that's why he added it in here. He said it's very important as a leader that you just make decisions. He said you need to go with them. You need to decide. You can't sit on things. There's only so much research you can do. He said that the only way to get things done is to constantly be making decisions, and everybody's going to be looking at you for final approval and final decisions. Another thing he said was commitment and passion. He said no matter what you're doing, you need to be committed to the task. And he had to do this with both companies. He had less of the passion for the first one, but he still gave it 110%. He was still committed. He was still there every day. He had a lot of work that needed to be done, and he always made sure it was done. Because if not, the businesses would have just fallen apart. Finally, he said something that is very, very, very important for a leader to have is delegation and trust. He said, you're not going to be able to do it all, especially when he was running Oracle, because he was in charge of hundreds of employees, which had hundreds of jobs, hundreds of contracts. He's like, I couldn't do it all. However, I had to trust in my employees that I hired the right people, that they would get the jobs done, and I would delegate tasks out. Now, the way he really likes to do it is to have someone in charge and then, a couple well-trusted people to then be in charge of others. That way, there's just organization. Everyone knows who they can go to if they have a question, as well as it's more of checks and balances to make sure things are getting done. And again, he says 100% you have to trust your employees. It's important to make sure things are getting done, but it's also important that you give them a chance. You trust that things are going to get done. Now, my perception of the individual as a leader after the interview, I actually thought it was a very rewarding experience. I kind of went back and forth with it. I was like, I really feel like I could get a lot out of interviewing someone else. But the more I thought about my dad, I just really felt like I would get the most out of an interview with him. It really showed me what it was like to run a big company and what it was like to run a small company. Like I said, I've always grown up seeing him go to work and doing his jobs, but I really was shielded from a lot of the business stuff that he does. So I really thought it was rewarding to see what he does and how he chooses to lead. I would say that the one thing I got out of this interview was that my dad chooses to lead out of kindness. Now, his employees all respect him. I see it all the time when I walk through the halls. Everyone talks highly of him. Everyone, if he asks you of something, it's getting done. Nobody crosses the line with him. However, they also know that if they ever truly need something, he is there. He shows them kindness. If someone really needs, an advance because they're having a hard time, he's given it to them. If someone really needs to bring their kid in for the day because, their babysitter quit, then he's okay with that. Again, he believes that this can be a family and that we can all help each other, because what he said in the interview was that their success is my success. That was so profound to me because it's so true. It's important for a leader to want those around you to succeed. The only way the business will profit is if everyone in there is bringing in clients, if everyone is in, a happy, we can do this attitude, and that we're getting things done. Because when they're able to bring in clients and make money, then my dad is able to make money and have a successful business. That was one of the key statements he said in the interview. Their success is my success. Something else he said was that it is important that you are the leader that is needed for that situation. Now, what he was referring to was his experience leading a large company of hundreds of employees and a small business of 13 employees. He says, I constantly had to adjust to the situation. They were two completely different types of leadership styles that I had to be. Not everyone at Oracle knew who he was, and that was okay. And he had to make sure there was more organization. There was more delegation, and it was just a different type of leadership. Now, with the smaller business, I can definitely tell he's happier. It's more his style of leadership. He wants to know all of his employees. He wants to know their families. He wants to be able to help all of them. And he's able to do that. I've even seen him adjust his leadership style to the certain employees that are in there. Sometimes he needs to be that leader that really cracks down on employees and doesn't let stuff slide. Other times, he gets to be that kind employee or kind leader. And other times, he just gets to watch them grow. Finally, something he said, which I thought was really interesting, is that he strongly believes anybody can be a leader. Now, I know we've kind of talked about this in class and, do you kind of have the traits to be a leader? Do you learn the traits to be a leader? I definitely think anyone can learn traits. But I also do think that some people, just will always prefer to be a follower, or some people will always choose to be a leader. But I definitely think it is important to understand that you can constantly strive to improve and you can constantly try to learn new things like leadership, like empathy, like sympathy, like any of the things he named to be a good leader. Because the truth is, not everybody is going to possess all these traits, but you can constantly be working and striving, to learn new ones and to evolve as a person. Overall, I really enjoyed this interview. I really enjoyed getting to sit down with my dad. I was very pleased with who I decided to interview because, like I said, I thought it was really interesting how much he could tell me about leading this big company versus leading this small company and all the little differences that, he felt went into each side. I definitely could see what he was talking about. There's just a different type of leadership needed with a big company of hundreds of employees. Obviously, you're not going to know them all. Obviously, it's more of just meetings and making decisions. Whereas running the small business, it was a lot more getting to be hands-on and getting to know everybody and getting to lead with that kindness that he loves to lead with. Thank you.